Hey gamers, Fat here with a quick instructional video on the Hypatia combat log viewer, and I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. I tried my best, but it's either Hypatia or Hypatia. I'm not 100% sure. Either way, I really want to review this tool. I know the developer. I've been testing it for him now for about 2.5 months. We used it through ID and started using it through the new instance FT and Storm Legion, and it's really become a useful tool that anybody who really is into raiding, casual or hardcore, should get their hands on and really start to dive in and use this. It gives a lot of information to anybody. I use it to figure out, if my rogues are all on par and if the rotations are correct. I've used it to see what's killing people, see how healing has been timed out. Other things that you can get an ACT, but with the web being the way it is, and everybody in the guild and the raid group can log into this site and look at the same thing you're looking at the same time, this tool has become pretty much priceless at this point. Now I am going to show you the real-time client, and the real-time client is a paid feature. The guy who is developing this has put a lot of time into it, and I would highly recommend anybody, if you can donate a few bucks to him or pay the monthly fee. For 3 months it's, I believe, 40 bucks or 20 bucks, and you have 20 people that raid. That's a couple bucks a person for 3 months subscription. It's well worth the money. The tool will help you out greatly as you continue to go through and learn instances and do things with each other. So with that being said, I want to take some time and really go through the tool itself, especially the real-time client, and show you how I use it. And then after that, we'll go to the website. I'll show you some of the graphs from one of our runs a couple days ago, and I'll show you how I use the tool to help break down, healing, damage, and etc. That way, you kind of get an idea. The navigation of the bar at the top can be a little confusing at first. Until you've used it enough, it becomes second nature. So let's get started by bringing up the actual Hypatia log viewer client, and the client is going to be down in the left-hand corner the entire time. I'm going to leave it up while I'm actually parsing some data. You're going to log into it like so. After you've logged into the actual client, it's going to bring up a couple options, one of which is quit, one is create report, and one is settings. Go to your settings first and tell it where your combat log is located. Most people, your combat log will be under your documents folder. Rift changed it a couple patches ago to be located there. And then there's a second option for archiving, where every time you finish your parse, it will actually archive it, zip it, and leave it in the folder. That way you get a fresh log every time, and you can go back and delete your archives at any point in time. So I'm going to start a new report. Let's go ahead and create report. The first thing it asks you is the description. Now, again, on the website, I'm going to go to my control panel and show you where the description actually shows up. So when you look at your reports, the description is the actual name of the report you're making. And this one I'm going to call, Test Dummy 2. I don't really have a raid that I'm going to run to kind of really show you the power of this. I'm going to look at an old FT run that we did. And then what type of report you want it to be, public or private. Private, only people in your guild and in your guild roster on the site will be able to see private reports. Public, anybody can see them. So it really depends on how private you want. A lot of times when we're progressing, I'll keep them private. After we're done progressing, I'll start putting them public, because a lot of people can see your public reports and kind of figure out and dissect how you're killing a boss, and it'll help them out greatly. And I would highly recommend anybody that can, please make them public. That way everybody can see them. So for this testing purposes, I'm going to make a private, and I'm going to hit the create button. And then it comes up and says, let's go ahead and start parsing or close the report. Once you hit the start button, it's going to tell you, hey, there's no combat log. Well, yeah, I'm not parsing in the game right now. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the game, and I'm going to enable combat log. So let me go ahead and minimize this screen. For those of you that don't know how to enable it, you basically hit the enter key, you hit slash and type in combat log. Once you do that, you will actually get a little text saying combat log enabled. Then once some damage is pushed into the combat log, you will actually see the Hypatia start to process the data, as you just saw. So let me pop it over. It's processing the data currently, no longer saying I don't have a combat log. I'm going to damage on the boss a little bit here and just kind of get some stuff in the combat log to show you what it can do for you. And one of the benefits of having the real-time is you don't have to wait for the website to process your log. It's putting it up every couple seconds, and it's using very little bandwidth. The guy has done a really good job of making this a useful tool, and where the other sites that have been out and have been around have failed is the fact that they didn't have this particular style tool to actually, in real time, dump your log up to a site to review it. So I'm going to sit here for a minute. There's some white damage on this bar. There's some actual damage on this boss. Just to kind of show you, it's not lagging my game out, it's not hurting me at all. It's using such a small amount of bandwidth. I think when I was talking to him yesterday via Whispers, it was only using like 8 or 9K every time it pumped data up, which is next to nothing. Alright, so I have enough data, I think, just to kind of give you the example. I'm going to run away now because unfortunately you don't just drop combat. You gotta run halfway around the world to get out of combat when you're doing the test dummies. So all the lines have been processed, as you see. One thing I will tell you is before you close your report, shut off your combat log. So again, I'm going to type in combat log / combat log is now disabled. I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to hit the close report. Once you hit the close report option, this box will pop up. Are you finished with the report? Yes, I am. The next box will pop up and says, do you want to archive, delete the combat log reports? And you can say no if you want to. I'm going to say yes, so it archives them and makes them a zip file. And then once that's done, you'll get a little window that says report closed successfully, which again, now you have no combat log again. It's emptied it out. You'll be able to start fresh with the next report if you want to start creating a report right away. The other option is just hitting the quit option, which then will close out the window itself. So, with that being said, now I'm going to switch back over and show you what we've captured and how to use the actual combat log viewer. So if you go back to the website, you got to refresh because it doesn't have the new report. What you see there is now Test Dummy 2. There's a small note. You can actually go and watch the report in real time. So if you just want to run it throughout the entire raid and come back into the website and just keep looking at each encounter, I tested this yesterday. It'll say here instead of the updater, or instead of status of available, it'll say real time. And when you go into the report by clicking on it and you go up to the encounters, it will actually pop up with a window down here saying there's a newer version of this available, do you want to see it now? And you can refresh the page and it will actually show you the newest report. Very good feature. Again, if all of your raiders are in here, you finish wiping to a boss, you can come back and look at this information as a group and figure out what you're doing wrong and what you have to fix. So again, this is just a boss dummy. As you can see, there's 3 players, or actors as they call them, in attendance, and there's no bosses found because obviously we were hitting on the actual boss dummy. To show you the total healing done, the duration of the fight, how much total damage it was, and a few other informations about the active time, how long that we were active for, 1 minute and 26 seconds. The first page is just a breakdown of damage and contribution. So instead of sitting here and looking at the test dummy data, I'm actually going to go look at one of our raid nights as we were trying to down the first boss in FT. Give it a second to load up. So in here, there are more names than we actually had in raid because I left the combat log running a little longer after I left the raid. And I did not use the real-time client for this, so this is old data. Here's the calling distribution. It tells you who was there, tells you the focus of how much time was spent on each of the bosses, how many wipes you had compared to kills, how long the combat was compared to downtime. So if you're running this through the entire raid, you can show how efficient you are, which is a really nice feature. Now all of the actual data is based on the report dashboard, up here at the top. Once you select a boss, which I'm going to go ahead and show the kill that we had on the first boss in FT, you will see that the top bar will actually have additional options. You can choose the NPC that you were looking at. You can look at a specific player and what their particular damage output was, or you can look at encounter summaries. And in this case, I'm going to first start off by looking at the encounter summary page, which we're currently in. And the encounter summary is going to show you, everybody, their percentage of damage. It'll show you the healing received. It'll show you the damage done by what target. We were doing Icebound, Shrouded Vortex, and Stormbirds. It'll show you who was receiving damage and how much they were doing. And it will show you the sources of which received damage. The actual review encounter summary is a really good page. But this page is nice, but my favorite page is when you break it down into the damage done and the healing done. So when you break into the damage and healing done page, this is where it really starts to get interesting. You can actually look at the peaks and valleys of all of your players during that time, and you can actually go through and deselect and reselect different people to view different information. So just to give you an example, let's say I want to look at my rogues and I want to see what the rotations are and if they all are basically maintaining the same rotation. If you look at this, the graph shows that they all pretty much have the same rotation and they all have the same peaks and valleys, which means they all have close to the same rotation going. As you mouse over, you're going to notice that everybody should have roughly the same number 1 ability, the same number 2 ability, and the breakdown should be close to the same. And if they are, they're running their specs optimally. Now, let's say you want to look at everybody in the group, you just click on the toggle all button at the top, and it will actually show you the entire breakdown of the entire fight and who was using what. If you go back up to the damage done, you can actually see healing done, damage received, player deaths, failure report, which is kind of nice because it'll tell you who died to what. Now, I do know that he has to put in failure conditions. So one of the failure conditions could be like a reflective shield. And if someone died to that, it'll show you who derped it up and decided to die to the reflective shield. There's none that she particularly has. You can go through the player death report and it'll show you that during that particular fight, who was killed and why. So that'll give you an idea, why they were dying. As everybody knows, the first boss has the actual birds. I can't remember the name of them off the top of my head. They will actually hit players triple shot them if you don't have the aggro on them, and that's pretty much not a healable portion of the encounter. And you can look at your healing done, and again with the healing done, the reason I would use this is if there's a part in the fight where there's an AoE heal mechanic where you have to have everybody blow their AoE heals, you can actually see the ebb and flow of your healers and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. So that's kind of a quick overview. The primary portion of this actual video was for me to show you the real-time client, and I can tell you I've used a couple different tools in the past. I really enjoy this tool, and I can't hype it enough. I mean, anybody that gets a chance, definitely log on. At least use the upload combat log option. Basically you do the same thing that the real-time client does, but you just drag and drop with a Java client your combat log to this location, and when you do, it will upload it and then process the whole thing in the background. Now, the benefit to using the real-time is that you have the option with your guild or with your raid group to look at combat as the fights are happening. With this particular option, it processes a log one at a time, and it may not be at the beginning of the list, so you're going to have to wait till they get processed. It's a nice option if you want to go back in later and look at what you were doing, but anybody that's serious about raiding in any way would definitely purchase the actual client that they can use in real time. And again, I believe the monthly fee is $15, and for 3 months for $40, that's $2 a raider for 3 months. Most of us blow more than that on a cup of coffee, so I really can't see a reason not to help this guy out for all the time and effort he's put in. Well, while I'm here, let's take a look at some of the other attempts that were made by other guilds. So let's go to top reports here, and we'll take a look at Mutiny's report and see what they've got up. So their particular players in this group is listed here. I want to take a look at damage done like I currently am. Let's take a peek at their rogues and see what their rogues are doing, if they're all in the same, ebb and flow in the same rotation. So it looks like Dispo here is running probably, I would almost say, he's running the marksman with the sentry battery, so he's not running the hybrid spec, and that's why his burst is so much higher. That sentry is a pretty big AoE. Where if we look at the other, actually most of them are running that. Well, everybody except for Natalie here. Looks like he's running the hybrid. But with them using the sentry battery, that means that they all should be peaking like Dispo is here. If they're not peaking, they're not using their AoE at the right time. There you go. See right there, Trickster's matching up with Dispo. So they're pretty much, this may be a gear difference on why there's a little more damage here than not. But if you look at the combat log, particularly Trickster, who looks like he's running the same thing with sentry battery, either he's got a lot less gear or he's just not laying into him correctly, because he is massively lower than the other two rogues. And then as you can see, Nadil, who is not running the 51 marks and doesn't have the sentry battery, his DPS is pretty much dropping off because either he's single targeting or he's not using rain of arrows when he should be. And based on looking at this, I don't see rain of arrows in, so I'm pretty sure he's not AoEing when the ad phases up. And that's basically if they're doing the same strategy that most guilds are doing now, where you're killing a bird, killing the whirlwind, killing another bird, then killing the ads before the boss gets to the tank again. So total DPS in this group, which they're meeting the check, is 153,000 throughout the fight. A lot of that's based off the AoE that's happening. As you can see, they got 3 phases of having to deal with the birds. Let's take a look at the healing done. Wow, healing's all over the place. Looks like the Chloro is doing a good chunk of the AoE healing, which there's a lot of damage going out raid wide. And then you got the Bard and 1 Cleric. 2 clerics actually, should have these 2 listed too, and one's running a Defiler, one's running a Justy. The Justy's probably the tank. Salvation healing. A Warden. Yeah, they're running basically a mix of healing, but as you can see, the actual Chloro is doing a good chunk of the AoE healing over the group. So that's basically it. I'm not going to go too much further into it. I would highly recommend hopping in and taking a look at the this particular log, this log viewing application. You can switch between bosses. It's a great tool. I can't hype the guy enough. And feel free to leave any comments down at the bottom. I'm always open for comments. And if you have any suggestions for the actual owner of the site, feel free to hop him over, drop him a few suggestions. He's a pretty open guy. He's open to changing the product, and he's trying to make something that we all can use and benefit in the gaming world. So with that being said, I'm out.